Services offering is a very robust and helpful management tool for our business, and we hope you will see the value in it as well. Today we're going to go through the NetSuite Services toolset just in general to give you a sense of the lay of the land. We'll go into a solution review where we'll actually look at a demo environment and give you the look and feel of the NetSuite interface and sort of see how NetSuite treats projects and billing and that sort of stuff. And we'll also talk about the basic delivery methodology of a NetSuite implementation. That'll be a short section, but for anybody who is considering NetSuite and would like to know what it would take to implement a system like the ones that we'll be discussing and demoing today, we'll have that for you. If at any time you have any questions, feel free to submit them via the webinar toolset. And thank you very much again for joining. So in terms of the NetSuite Services toolset, NetSuite as the sort of preeminent cloud ERP application sees a stairway approach to their clients' maturation on the product. And this is shown by how they go to market with their product. It is a set of SKUs that you can piece together and expand as your business matures and your functional footprint grows. And so the idea with the professional services realm is that generally speaking, your introductory implementation will land you somewhere in the early phases, the establish and elevate phases, where you are transactionally accounting for and reporting on all of the activities germane to your professional service organization. Where you get into more advanced features like advanced revenue management, subscription management, planning, budgeting, tax stuff, e-commerce, all of that comes with more advanced implementations. However, NetSuite as a universe allows you to pick and choose what you implement when. And so if you do have an organization that needs some subset of these capabilities in your phase one implementation, that is entirely possible. Nonetheless, the sort of organic path that NetSuite has set forward for its professional services and service companies in general implementations is shown on this slide. Now, in terms of what the tool set has under the hood, it is an end-to-end solution for professional services firms. So I'm not going to go into all the nitty-gritty details, but as you look through some of these elements, know that they're quite expansive. So while there's a swim lane dedicated to sales, that's a CRM suite and a sales order management suite, which is handling your prospect, lead, and opportunity tracking. It's helping you forecast your revenue and your resourcing, and it's providing you a capability to determine how you want to record your revenue financially. Do we need to recognize it over the term of our products or services and that sort of thing? Resourcing, again, best-in-class kind of resource management capability where you can have complex costing, complex pricing. There's grid visual interaction with your resource assignments that you get to see and sort of feel and work with a graphic interface, and we'll show that during the demo section. Project management and delivery, we'll be covering this in great detail, so I'm not going to go into much of it right now, but all of these areas allow you to enhance your capability, enhance your offerings, offer your customers more flexibility with how you go to market, better account for your activities and report on your profitability for your projects or with customers in general. And in addition, some of the stuff we didn't even mention is this technology and business platform that you're sitting on, where you get things like mobile capability out of the box. So if you have traveling professionals that need to do things like time and expense entry on a cell phone, that's something that's capable. And even executives, if they just want to see dashboard content and executive style reports on their mobile device, they have that capability in this framework and tool set. So when you look at professional service automation inside of a NetSuite instance, this is a very high level and very generalized kind of view of how an engagement may unfold. Nonetheless, it's helpful to conceptualize as a prospective client what a normal process might entail. So generally, your CRM and your pre-sales activities are sitting to the top left of this process. And as we come in, we generate a project at the top left corner, and notifications are sent to project managers and other informed personnel. Maybe our CFO needs to see it and make sure the contract looks good. Maybe it needs legal review. Those sorts of things are easily accomplished in NetSuite's workflow engine. As we move through, we'll need to resource the project, so we'll be staffed in resources, making sure that the resources have appropriate bandwidth. And if we need to alter, because a certain resource is overextended, we need to evaluate the skill sets of other folks and find somebody who is, the right fit for what we need to do. Once we've assigned everybody, we got to let them know, give them some details about the project and get them working. And the reason I put the time and expense management bubble in what is meant to estimate a cellular device is to indicate that, these folks can be entering time and expenses via a mobile interface. And these folks, by the way, can be employees or subcontractors. And so NetSuite also has the added benefit of allowing you to say, offer a vendor no-cost access to your system through the vendor center, whereby they can enter time and expense against a project if you're using a subcontractor, for example. And then, once all of these activities have been completed, there's an additional layer of governance where expense and time approval can occupy. And there are out-of-the-box solutions for this, as well as advanced configuration. So that governance is quite robust in the capability to make sure that everything that you're doing, approving, and is hitting your GL is accurate and encoded correctly. Once all of these charges hit the projects, billing rules take fold. Now, having said that, you'll see once we get into the demo section, there are a million different ways to skin the billing cat, if you will. And so some projects, regardless of whether or not charges exist, they'll be billed because they're fixed fee against a milestone sort of thing. So we'll see that this process is a generic attempt, again, to help you conceptualize. It is not necessarily the same process you would follow in every particular business instance. So with that, one other quick note on the power of NetSuite. One of the last key elements in the professional services realm is the accounting automation that can happen behind the scenes. And so across a lot of different elements of your business, you will have requirements to perhaps allocate expenses. We're making a purchase for server space that's shared by all of our departments or divisions. Well, we'll want to put that on it. Not only will we want to put it on an allocation schedule, we'll want to amortize it across, this year, because we're going to pay this bill up front. On the order to cash side, it allows you to create billing schedules. So for instance, if you have a monthly time and material project, you can create a monthly billing schedule to pick up all the charges that have been accrued against it. And then revenue plans, which are the ability, if you have clients or customers paying up front for termed services or subscriptions, that you need to defer revenue recognition over that term to some degree. NetSuite has a very robust capability there, and a lot of clients really get a lot of value out of that because it frees up quite a lot of their financial resources, time from having to go through the details of administering revenue recognition entries. So having said that, let's bump on over to the product. And this is a demo environment that is specific to a professional services firm. So it's pretty straightforward. It's got some demo data, nothing outlandish. There's been very little customization. If there is customization, you will see it prefaced by the 3-letter prefix GSI. So none on this screen. For the folks who are unfamiliar with NetSuite, some of the common things up here in the right corner, you can see I'm logged in as a user named Mark Collins, who has a project manager role in this service organization. Some of the things to point out about the NetSuite dashboard. All of this content, which as you can see is quite rich, it's visually available. You, as you get accustomed to where information is, you can quickly assess where things are in terms of, where are my billable hours versus my threshold in last month. You get used to where this stuff is. However, this stuff is all completely customizable. And so, as a user, you're empowered to change this setup to make it fit your organization, your date ranges, your view of the business. If you want to compare billable hours by quarter as opposed to month, that is your prerogative and your capability to set up within the tool set. One of the great benefits of NetSuite as your core ERP is because of its end-to-end functionality, the data set that is underlying NetSuite, all of the transactions, everything that hits the GL is normalized to the NetSuite schema. And so all of these KPI meters and dashboards, whenever I refresh them, I'm refreshing them against live data. There's no batch processing that's running in the background to feed the data set that are feeding these portlets. They are sourced directly from live. And so if a huge sales order hits my ledger, I'm going to see this particular portlet jump. All of this, again, is customizable, but you can see how out of the box we've gotten a lot of good value, not only in the information that's presented, but the actionable behavior. I've got time records to approve. All right, let me just click this reminder on my portlet and go review these time records. And hey, maybe I'm just going to, approve them all. I would prefer not to because I want to keep testing in this environment, but you get the point that these dashboards are landing strips that are customized and customized by role. So, as a project manager, I'm going to get information germane to my activities. If I were to log in as a controller, I'm going to see details that are, more up my alley. How are my payables against last period? How's EBITDA doing this year? How is my income per period doing against a moving average? All of this is going to be set up, specified to you and your role, and beyond that, you as an individual NetSuite user have the capability to customize this. So just as you get accustomed to NetSuite, this is a very powerful tool set to have your entire business encapsulated in, because it provides all of this capability with regards to data visualization, process automation, and people automation, sending folks reminders and letting them know, hey, you've got, records to approve or expense reports, etc. So back to my project manager role, and sorry, I like the line graphs better than the charts. Let's go ahead and start looking at some records, just to get a sense of sort of how NetSuite treats project management and services in general. So by far the hallmark of a service organization inside of NetSuite is going to be the project record. With project management enabled in a NetSuite account, you have the ability to set up Gantt style project task views with dependencies and predecessors, costs and pricing per resource and per activity. So the general sort of tool set for project management. There are a lot of benefits inside of this record, but I will say this, NetSuite project management is an ideal way to approach project work that you have that has a defined scope, a defined end dates, sets of milestones that you need to hit, etc. If you want something that's more of, say, a managed service offering where clients have buckets of hours or that type of thing, it works, but you need to do some slight customization. However, having said that, in all ways, it is a very robust mechanism for accounting for and tracking activities related to a project. As you'll see some of the basic details, you know, this customer could have came from a prospect or an op, and you know, this customer ultimately will be the recipient of the AR that this project generates. In my overview, my planned work is the amount of work that my schedule has allotted for me. And so overall, in the course of this project, I intend to do 73 hours worth of work. My actual work gives me the detail of how many hours I've spent to date. You know, actually billed, remaining's what's left. Allocated refers to the resource allocation portion of the module, which gives us that visual way to schedule and deal with resource bandwidth and to forecast resource usage. So we can see we're slightly over allocated. That may be in our organization's best interest because of what we've learned with this client, et cetera. Nonetheless, these are all reportable values, and they're all easily accessed, and they're all updating, you know, as the project proceeds. Inside of the project, we'll see the schedule, which has the tasks. We'll get into slightly more detail on these later, but the tasks contain a lot of the fundamental details of how the project's going to proceed. You know, how we're resourced, who's assigned to it, how their costs, how they're planned. You know, this planned work in this task rolls up to the overall project work, and that's how that number is assembled. So these are the primary scheduling and rate drivers for the project. Our resources are the folks that we have assigned. They can be internal employees, they can be external vendors. In some cases, we'll use generic resources because we don't know who's going to be assigned. We just know somebody needs to be. In the financial tab of a normal project setup is some of the real core details. Specifically this billing type. NetSuite will allow you to do 4 primary billing types. There is a time and material, so basically a charge based on actuals. There's a fixed fee, and generic, just a fixed fee milestone that's based on the achievement of milestone task, and a fixed fee interval, which is based on some cycle. You can additionally customize and create your own billing types, but generally between those 3/4 methodologies, you have the capability to achieve any type of billing that you need to do. In this case, we're using a fixed bid milestone, so there's not a lot of details on how we're assembling our charges, so we will review that in a subsequent project. In addition, this project may in fact be at the head of a portfolio. So we may have child projects associated to this. We don't in this case, but we can have embedded project relationships and create portfolios for clients and report on them individually, but say invoice on them collectively. In terms of communication, this is a normal NetSuite tab, but for folks that aren't familiar with this, this is a very powerful capability where we can maintain, say, emails with our clients. If we have decisions that we wanted to attach files as reference, we can do that both at the project and at that task level. So that's a very powerful capability for some governance and just maintaining documentation, etc. Related records are going to detail related transactions related to this. And I'm going to come right back here, so I'm going to skip over this for the time being. Preferences are fundamental to how these things get set up, and one very important element of NetSuite is that you get a lot of capability just out of the box. Do we want to say include CRM tasks as cost and project totals? Do we want to set up a time approval methodology specific to this project? These preferences, and you can read them for yourself, they're quite self-explanatory, but it is powerful to just have the ability to, on a project by project basis, dictate this. Now, having said that, there is a concept in NetSuite of project templates, which most clients use, and all of this configuration can be saved as a template and applied to future projects that are similar to this with just slight alterations. The budgeting for a project can be calculated, as I have in this case, or it can be something that you manually create based on what you've negotiated with the client, etc. And this allows you to do reporting against both your expenses and your revenue side of the project. And in addition, you can, unfortunately, on this particular project, I will show you one where we have some detail, but we also have a profit and loss kind of statement on a per project basis, which is quite handy. People like to be able to quickly assess how things are doing in flight. Now, you might say, well, we're 32% done with the project. How come? Well, as it turns out, this particular project, as I noted before, it's on a milestone billing agreement. And in this case, we created a sales order initially to create this project. And so we'll need to take a look at that sales order to look at the billing schedule that was initially extended to the client. So if we look at the billing schedule, apologize, it's loading up. This is what we anticipate billing for. And you can see, we're going to bill for 25% of the total at each of these tasks or milestones. And we've got estimated completion dates out there. As it turns out, we've already completed one of our activities. And so from our perspective, we do have the capability to bill this client. And so if we so desired, we could directly bill them from the sales order. So if I chose next bill, the sales order is going to take a look at how things are set up. It's going to note that my bill date ought to be the 31st, the completion date of my milestone. And it's going to calculate the amount based on that billing schedule. In this case, I'm not going to create that invoice simply to show that there are other means to achieve that. There, in terms of how NetSuite is set up, it's meant to automate things, but you have a lot of capability in order to get the process right for you. So you may want to go on a sales order by sales order basis and bill these sales orders, and that's totally fine. You can review it and say next bill. That is acceptable. you may want to do things in mass, where you come in and you look at, you know, who do I have that's got something out there that's billable. Another thing that a lot of clients like is billing operations, which can be scheduled. And these billing operations, so in the case of this was MITS was my client, I can run these in a sort of targeted way where I'm looking for a particular client. And I'm going to go ahead and say, you know, I want to pick up everything and generate some invoices if I find any charges. Now, this is important. If I run this as of today, it's going to fail because, as you'll recall, my completion date was as of the 31st. So I'm going to need to run this out to when my my operation was complete, and it's going to create that bill. Now, this can be automated in the background, so nobody in your organization needs to take any action for, say, a monthly billing run on any of your customers. This billing operation is grabbing charges for time and material customers, the same as it's achieving milestone billing impacts for the milestone client that I'm taking a look at right now. I apologize, as it thinks we're in a demo environment, which is slightly underpowered, so we have to sort of deal with things taking a while. So we can see here that we went ahead and got an invoice that will be very similar to the invoice that was generated prior. Another powerful element of NetSuite is just the ability for users to get in and alter transactions and make updates. If, for instance, you know, some additional activity was required or I needed to update this rate, I could simply come in to the invoice and change it as I desire. So that gives you kind of a rough idea of some of the ways that that projects are set up, that billing operations are proceed and how projects can be billed. At this point, I'm going to step out into a more privileged role, simply so I can slide around the system with ease, and I don't need to worry about permissions and the like. But let's take a look at a different project now. This one is going to be a time and material based project. And so in this instance, we've negotiated a rate with the client, but we said, you know, we're just going to charge you whenever these the charges occur. In this case, you'll note that in the financial tab, I've got a lot more details on how these charges are going to be accumulated. And another powerful capability emerges, and that's the charge-based rules. So I have, oops, I should have just, my apologies. I can create multiple charge-based rules, and I'm just going to call this one test and set this as 1. This will mean that this rule will take priority. This is just going to be a 20% multiplier, and in this case, I want to do this, let's see, if the item is a fixed fee project. And so this will be the service item on the line. And so what I've just done is created an additional rule that will be evaluated first. And so any time entry will be multiplied. You have a 2% adder to it if it's against that particular service item. And so these rules and sequencing can get very complex, but ultimately you have a lot of capability to really tie down how you want to value things and how you want to price them for your customers. So irregardless of who's doing the activity itself dictates the price that your clients pay for. And you don't need to rely on your practitioners to necessarily encode that with their time entries. you can configure the system to achieve these results. And so these rules exist across the spectrum, and can be set up at a lot of detail. We don't necessarily have time to go to that level of detail today, but again, we can take a look at how this all proceeds. So in this case, we have another project with, in this case, both expenses and time entry against it. You can see that quite a few of these have been processed, which means that they've been billed to our customer. However, you can see these top 4 remain at a ready status. So this is an example of another issue where we have a billable for a customer. It's not the same circumstances, the milestone, but we could still use a scheduled billing operation to achieve the result. And so if we come into here, I believe I apologize now that I moved into a different role. I forgot how to, well, you know what? I'll just do it from my my record. I apologize. Now, shoot. Can't do it from my record. I'm just going to have to find out how to do what I intend to do. I am so sorry for the time that this is taking. Here we go, process billing operations. So my apologies. So this project was against a client called Abbott. And so I recall they were in my West. Abbott, okay. In this case, I can go ahead and run my bill run as of today because it's a time and material. And again, this will process and pick up charges related to those unprocessed charges that we saw when we were reviewing the project. So we'll let this think for a little bit. A long bit, I do apologize. Let me go ahead and move on to another element of the, well, we can see it finished. And we've got our invoice. And we'll see that the charges end up getting consolidated for our expenses and our time entry on our invoice. And again, editable, etc. And again, the billing schedule being something that we could automate and schedule and not really worry about. One other thing that we have not gotten an opportunity to take a look at is our resources and how we deal with resourcing projects. So conceptually, NetSuite keeps track of 3 different buckets of time for a project, and I showed these at the beginning. But your actual being that the time that your client is, the billable time or the time that your employees have entered against an individual task. Your allocated time will be that time with which your project managers or resource managers have allocated to resources to work on particular projects. Your plan time will be based on the project and schedule and task configuration, how much time and how much cost you associate with the project. And so what that looks like in practice is that once we have our resource allocations set up for a particular project, we can view those resource allocations on this chart grid view that I will be loading presently. And this is a pretty heavy interface in a demo account, so do forgive a couple seconds of load time. This is a rather powerful interface which gives you a time-phased view of your resources and, oh, apologize, apparently I had a department filter on there, of your resources and their time allocations and what they're allocated against. And so if I look back at my project, I believe that this Gary fella is, yeah, he's assigned to it. And you can see his assignments. Now, this view is very powerful because it immediately tells me that Gary is completely overworked. You know, this week in particular, we need to really look to perhaps offload him. So can we reschedule this, or can we reassign this? Well, we can come in here and move it to another individual easy enough and move it. We can postpone these simply by dragging and dropping them visually if we so desire. Now, whenever I make those changes, nothing takes impact until I press save in the system. So you'll see me do some wild stuff here. I'm not going to press save, but nonetheless, I can manipulate this. Once I do press save and my results refresh, I will see updates to indicate, you know, whether or not I've successfully addressed whatever concern I may have had. Nonetheless, this gives me the ability to look at my resources, forecast out on a weekly, daily, monthly basis. If I don't like a chart view, I can look at it in a grid view to see more detail. These allocations themselves, whenever you look at them, can be made either as a block of hours or a percentage of time. And so in instances where you see strange decimals, this is the amount of hours that this resource is committed to this project this week. It's because they've been committed by a percentage. And so if I look at the allocation, it's by percentage of their time. And we'll actually go ahead and just take a look at a resource allocation record to give you guys the view of that. And so the components of this, the start and end dates are pretty central. You know, you can simply, you know, put somebody over the life of a project, or if you know, for instance, that they're going to be fully engaged on site for a week, you can just, you know, set it to that. The allocation can be a percent of time or just in hours. And this system is continually reallocating everybody to try and build that capacity view that I showed you in the resource allocation screen. So if you allocate them as a hard allocation, that tells the system this is immobile. If something else comes along, this cannot be altered, you know, 100% of the time between these dates. Gary is, you know, unavailable. Or it can be soft, which allows the system, whenever it's doing its planning, to move. So if, for instance, we had, you know, 4 hours over a date period and the first 3 days were totally consumed, it would move those forward to the second to last day kind of thing. And so all of that is building what you see in the resource view. In addition to this, we have different ways of viewing this data. So if, for instance, you're not necessarily interested in looking at individual resources, but you just want to make sure particular customer has appropriate staffing, you can come into a customer view and make sure that you know, for whatever, you know, account that you need to service, that they have the appropriate resource mix to achieve you know, the work you have set out. And it goes to as well to the project view. And so it's a very helpful visual tool that allows clients to look at work that's being inbound. And one other note, by the way, let me just bump back to the resource default view. These allocations can be made to your generic resources as well. So recall in the beginning of the presentation, I mentioned that you can set project work to generic resources. I highly recommend that you engage in a naming convention for these resources, as this example is going to show you, because it helps segregate them from everybody else, which is desirable for you. But these folks down here, this /US folks, these are generic resources. You can see their resource type. And this just allows me to say, you know, I want a placeholder for particular types of work while I determine how to resource it. And so you can see, you know, I've got a lot of work cut out for me if I'm the resource manager, because I've got hours, you know, this week and in upcoming weeks that are still scheduled to generics that I'll need to allocate to, you know, the appropriate people. This is sort of how it looks and feels. Let me make a couple last observations. Instead of running reports, which can take some time, I just wanted to show, you know, behind the system and these functionalities, we've got some really robust reporting. Profitability by month, and I'm sort of just showing one report, but some of the detail. This is something, the reason I show it here in the sort of summary and in detail is for those non-NetSuite users. You can create these and schedule them to email to you on a monthly basis, for example, so that you can see just, you know, all the projects that you care about. How are they doing? Are we, you know, are we redlining? What's going on? If you want, you know, the utilization by employee or project, you know, these are all just generic reports that NetSuite has. And what I'm showing you is just out of the box with zero customization. You can make these extremely refined, again, schedule them, put them on dashboards, etc. And, you know, to that matter, you know, some dashboard content that's capable in a professional services organization that's running NetSuite end to end. How much am I going to bill based on my projected billings? You know, how's my weekly cash doing? How's my income doing versus my moving average? These are all things that you can just see as you log into your instance, and really be empowered by having that capability. The delivery methodology, just real quickly, and I'm just going to run through this, but NetSuite has pre-configured solutions that they sell as their suite success model, which we employ at GSI to a certain degree. These solutions allow you to just sort of insert your data, and a lot of the content, the dashboards, the reports are pre-built for you. We help you to customize and really tailor that system to meet yours. And so sometimes we fall outside of this 100-day range simply because this 100-day range is meant for a very rigorous adherence to a specific timeline and set of activities. But this is an extremely powerful enabler for organizations because this framework is usable 100% of the time. You know, when you want to get your customers and your service items and your OpenAR and all that stuff into your new system, this methodology and the deliverables and the tool set around it are very, very powerful. Having said that, I will open it up for some Q&A. And I will just note as well, if we don't get to your question, or if you just want to ask me something offline, feel free to send me an email at the address that I'm displaying on the screen at any time. I love to talk NetSuite, and so any inquiries are invited. So let me open it up. Do we have any questions from folks out there in the audience?
Sean, this is Brittany. I do see a couple of questions have been submitted. The first question that we have is from Mark. His question is, what if my service is managed support, so my customers buy buckets of hours per quarter? How would that look?
Yeah, it's a good question. With some slight customization, what you would do would be on a project record, provide yourself the monthly, hourly allotment, and then basically your tasks that I showed you in the project would be month-long tasks, and you would simply bill to them when you exceeded your hourly budget, or you'd have notifications and that sort of thing. It would be a very minimal customization, but one that I would highly encourage you to make, simply because that monthly hour bucket and being able to report on it even at the dashboard level would help you control those accounts. So thank you for the question.
Okay, there's another question I see here, a couple of more. This one is from Tim. Can resource allocation records be CSV imported?
Short answer is yes, imported and updated. And so if, for instance, you do not want to interact via that GUI, the screen that I was showing, and you want to en masse, reallocate something to different group, or change everybody's start date to 5 days later, the CSV import works very well, and can be employed for resource allocation records as well.
Okay, and our last question is from David. Can there be GL entries associated with labor costs for time entries?
Yes, there is a additional module, job costing, that is required to create the cost entries associated to labor when time is entered. Natively, it creates a charge record to be billed to a customer, but it does not accrue a cost on your GL. So you would need to employ the job costing feature to get that done, but you can accomplish that within the NetSuite, project management module.
Awesome, thank you so much, Sean. I'm going to take over now to go over a few follow-up items from the webcast.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. My screen seemed to be frozen. Our webcast today is a part of GSI's free ongoing educational webcast series on NetSuite. Our upcoming webcasts are listed on the screen. To view our most up-to-date schedule, please visit getgsi.com/NetSuite/webcast. Check out our ERPtalk.com, which is a problem-solving forum where you can get your NetSuite and other enterprise application questions answered. Stay connected with us on social media. All of our handles are currently listed on the screen. You can see our most up-to-date posts on webcasts, events, industry insights, and so much more. GSI provides extensive free educational resources for the NetSuite community, including our weekly educational webcasts, monthly newsletter called GSI Insider, online resource center where you can access our on-demand webcasts, white papers, etc., on-site and virtual workshops. If you would like to sign up for our weekly email reminders for our upcoming webcasts, our monthly newsletter, or create an account to access our resource center, go to getgsi.com, go to resources and events on the main menu, select NetSuite, then select appropriate link on the right. All right, we have actually wrapped up our question and answer session. So I just want to thank Sean and everyone for your questions today. As a follow-up from today's webcast, we ask that you complete a short 1-minute survey when you exit. You will be receiving an email with a link to our resource center on our website where you can access the recording from today's webcast, as well as a copy of the presentation. After today's webcast, we will do the drawing for the $25 Amazon gift card. Anyone that attended the entire webcast will be eligible. We will notify the winner. If you have any follow-up questions, you can contact Sean or I, and we will get back to you. Our contact info is on the screen. Thank you, everyone, for attending the presentation, and have a great day.